Hey everyone, welcome to another match of Temur Rogues. Today we are playing Slivers. It's going to be a fun match. Slivers, pretty much one of the better definitions of aggro. They hit hard, they hit fast oftentimes, especially with Vial. Aether Vial on the board. Let's see how we deal with Slivers with Temur Rogues. So our opponent gets Aether Vial turn 1 with a Cavern of Souls, which means they're going to be pumping out Slivers, and we won't even be able to counter them even if we had counter magic in hand. So it's going to be interesting. Our opening hand is pretty good, though. 2 Mishra's Baubles will help us draw into our other cards relatively quickly, and a Seal of Fire will help remove early threats. So we see that they're going to be drawing Predatory Sliver next turn, one of the targets of our removal, since it pumps up our opponent's creatures. We play another Mishra's Bauble. Might as well target ourselves here, even though it won't make a difference. So we'll be drawing 2 cards. 2 lands. As long as those are the last lands we see in terms of drawing, that's okay. I don't want to see any more lands right now. We just need more removal and threats. They get a check land here, so it's going to be coming into the battlefield tapped. Probably a good thing for us, because it means they won't be able to play their 2-mana Slivers, which are many. We draw another land. Not fantastic. I'm a little bit disappointed with that one. That being said, this turn we'll most likely be able to attack with our Fairy Miscreant, and then cast Thief's Fortune for 1. I think we're going to start with Seal of Fire first, which I think makes sense in case they bring in a creature to block our Fairy Miscreant. Probably going to put a fetch land on the battlefield next. Fetch for an island. Yeah, looks like that. And then we will cast our Thief's Fortune. Thief's Fortune is actually going to be pretty good here. Let's see what we have. Okay, so no removal, but another 2 threats, land, and a Serum Visions. So I mean, another Fairy Miscreant is okay because it allows us to go into the air, but I think Lure il-kor is going to be a bit more interesting because as long as we get attacks in with it, we can start looting and discarding some of these excess lands that we have in our hand. Mutavault comes down. Now we know what we're going to see here, most likely. Sinew Sliver. Alright. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I won't say it again. Sedge Sliver. Alright. This is where we want to get rid of Sinew or Sinew. Dear God, forgive me. Get rid of it from now. Because we don't want any more pumping shenanigans going on. So what do we draw? Lightning Bolt, which is fantastic, actually. That's actually fantastic. While our opponent's tapped out, I have the hesitation to kind of just pop it now, but we have time to react. There may be other targets that we want to get first. Now, we have 6 card types in the graveyard. We had 5 before Traverse. We had 5 before Traverse, which means we can go get a threat. Goyf is a perfect target right now. We're going to remove Sinew next, and Sedge Sliver. And that's turn 3. Not bad for a turn 3. We know our opponent has Predatory Sliver in hand. Another Sinew, or Sinew. Okay. Aether Vial is ticked up to 3, which is notable. So we're taking a lot of damage here, but we kind of have to if we want to stay ahead of our opponent in terms of threats. Right now we're pinging him for 1 damage each turn with our Fairy Miscreant. It's not much, but it does add up relatively quickly. I think a 7/8 Goyf is fantastic right now because it kind of negates any attack that our opponent will have unless it's in the air. For now, at least, there's a sliver that gives all slivers flying, which is going to be painful if it comes down this turn. There's Predatory Sliver, and now our opponent is empty-handed, which is actually fine by me. And Aether Vial, their first Aether Vial is ticked up to 4 now as well. So I don't see any profitable attack, unsurprisingly. Tarmogoyf off the top is actually a great draw. Mutavault is coming out early here, interestingly enough. That's okay. I think our opponent's just doing that preemptively. Kind of keeping themselves open to removal, but at a 4/4, not much removal that we have would be able to kill Mutavault. So I give our opponent an option here to do nothing, which would be fine, giving them the impression that we have nothing else to put on the battlefield. But it looks like here they're willing to sacrifice their Mutavault, which is okay, because we're going to play two new threats anyway and see what they do. Keep in mind they're in top deck mode here, so are we, but given our board presence, we're doing better off here. So another Predatory Sliver comes down. Now they have a bunch of 4/4s. Still no real profitable attack because they're going to lose one of those in an attack, right? Lightning Bolt is actually pretty good. So let's see. So here, we could attack with everything. We would have to be careful because if our opponent calls our bluff, it becomes pretty dangerous. Now they're kind of forced to block here. And hopefully we can take out 3 creatures. At the very least. I'm guessing we're going to see some double block action. We don't. Alright. So that's very interesting. Now, off of the Looter il-kor, we draw Tarmogoyf, which is awesome. It's awesome. Now, that was a calculated risk, right? Because we have Noble Hierarch, which would be able to chump block one of their creatures, so they would only be coming in for 8. If they got another booster, they would be coming in for 10. But we would still be alive, which would be enough. They can't go all out because we have 2 7/8 Tarmogoyfs, so they would have to be careful with their attacks anyway, so they wouldn't just be tapping out altogether. That being said, what do they do here, right? Do they attack all in? Not really. Because again, we're going to be able to take out one of them. Now, I would have played this Sliver first. Gale Rider gives Slivers flying. I'm pretty sure. Okay, no, we would have gone down to 1. That's why I didn't play it. Okay, so that makes sense. But still, now that this is kind of an issue, right? So we're gonna attack with everything, and they're gonna be forced to block here. They can't just chump block 1 because each Tarmogoyf, all 3 of our Tarmogoyfs are lethal if one gets through. So they're gonna have to block each Tarmogoyf no matter what. Looter il-kor can't be blocked, so it's getting through. Fairy Miscreant can be blocked, but we don't really care, and I don't think they really care either. I'm doing it safe here, keeping Fairy Miscreant up in case somehow they get through this. Again, each Tarmogoyf must be blocked. So they double blocked 1, and that means they're going to lose all their Slivers now. Because of Lightning Bolt. Yeah, there we go. So at this point, we don't really need Thieves' Fortune. I just realized actually we didn't even need the Lightning Bolt, so it just died altogether. So that was brutal. What our opponent didn't take into account is that when their creatures die, the boosting effect goes away, right? So the +1/+1 effect is gone. which means everyone dies anyway because of damage. And we win the game. To be fair, our opponent really had no outs there, whether they played properly or not. Here, we're just going to go through with it and attack with everything. There we go, minus 15, and we win the game. So we did pretty good there for game one. I think our Slivers opponent drew relatively well. They had enough creatures out to have 4/4 and 5/5 Slivers. What really helped us here was our Tarmogoyfs. Our Tarmogoyfs were big early, and we were able to traverse for one. We drew into two others, and again, it just kind of negates any profitable attack for our opponent unless our opponent's creatures are flying. And that's really what's a killer for us. With that, their Sliver that gives all their Slivers flying is really a game ender. I mean, that's true for most decks, but it's no different for us. So what do we bring in here? Because we're relatively well positioned. Engineered explosives would hit us, but it would also hit our opponent particularly harder. But at the 2 CMC level, our opponent has a lot of 2 CMC creatures, but it also kills our Tarmogoyf, so it's not ideal. Phyrexian Revoker is not really... I mean, it's good for Aether Vial. So I see us bringing that in. But again, I mean, here I'm removing Magus of the Moon, and if you think about it, a Blood Moon-like effect is pretty good against our opponent. It just cuts them off of most of their, if not all of their colors. But I think here I chose to get off the Moon plan and stick to just attacking everything else that they resolve and forget their lands, which is a fair... It's a fair strategy. Let's see how it works. Phyrexian Revoker is in our opening hand, so that's pretty much a keep in case our opponent does get Aether Vial early on. They don't, in this case, have a check land in hand. Or it's check land on the battlefield now. Fairy Misdrain comes down. Mishra's Bauble, the usual play. Aether Vial is next. Alright. Luckily, we have an answer for Aether Vial. Yep, there it is. Engineer Explosive is our next draw, which is not bad. But pretty much putting Phyrexian... I mean, I would assume I'm putting Phyrexian Revoker down next. Yeah. Here we go. Aether Vial is now useless to our opponent. Forest comes down. Harmonic Sliver. Oh boy. Alright. Well, they got it. So they're gonna kill our Phyrexian Revoker, which is fine, but if you read the wording on Harmonic Sliver, every time a Sliver comes onto the battlefield, they have to destroy an artifact. So that includes their Slivers. So it's going to be kind of working against them here. So the trick here is we don't want them to target our Seal of Fire, even if we can crack our Seal of Fire in response and negate the effect. But what we want to do is we want to have some profit here and force them to target their own artifact. So I wasn't able to do it with the first cast, but it didn't work the way I thought it would work in terms of being on the stack, but now it doesn't really matter because they're going to have to destroy their Aether Vial. Which is pretty funny, if you think about it. It's pretty funny. So now we have a 2/2 Fairy Miscreant. It's going to become a 3/3 next turn, which is pretty good. We have 2 Lightning Bolts in hand, which is awesome. Just going to wait for a payoff Sliver to hit the battlefield. Harmonic Sliver we don't really care about anymore. Even if it could, in theory, target our engineering explosives, we'll just cast it when we can pay for everything. Sedge Sliver. So we let it resolve. Again, not very worried here. Yeah. Get rid of Sedge first. We can get rid of Blur next if necessary. But again, no rush. Thieves' Fortune, another really good draw. Let's see what we get off of Looter il-kor. A land. Yeah, we're going to discard that. Everything else is good in our hand. Tarmogoyf is, I don't even think I don't take more than a second to think about it. A 6/7 Tarmogoyf is pretty good. Pretty good. We're going to make our Fairy Miscreant a 4/4 now. Things are not looking too good for our opponent. Mutavault comes down. Collected Company. Alright. So this can be pretty brutal. Let's see what happens. Let's see what our opponent gets here. Oh. Alright. Not exactly what we want to see, but luckily our Lightning Bolt is definitely going to hit the Gale Rider Sliver. I don't really care about Vigilance here at the moment. I care more about the ability of their creatures flying up in the air. So they're going to come in now and hit us for 6 damage. That's going to hurt, but it's okay. We can recover. Traverse is actually awesome. And now we choose what we want to attack with. Odds are Engineer Explosives is going to go in the graveyard, depending on what we draw from Looter il-kor. Let's see. Serum Visions. Alright, looks like I have no interest in Serum Visions. Now, we can Traverse for a threat. Seeing as we have nothing that we can do with our Engineering Explosives at the moment, getting another threat makes sense. Tarmogoyf being that threat. Our Tarmals are now 7/8. So what can we do here? We can make our Fairy Miscreant bigger, but I know that I was thinking about touching Looter il-kor, targeting Looter il-kor. Touching seems unethical. But it looks like I chose Fairy Miscreant instead. So now we have a big 5/5 flyer. Who would have thought? And again, now that we have a 7/8, our opponent has to think twice about how they attack. Another Sentinel Sliver. Alright. I can live with that. Vigilance is not a problem for me right now. I just don't want another Gale Rider Sliver. That would be problematic. Granted, we do have Engineer Explosives, so I would just cast Engineer Explosives on 1 and take it out, but it would also kill our Fairy Miscreant, so not fun. So our opponent chooses to attack. What do I care about more here? The Blur Sliver is the most annoying one right now, giving all of our opponent's Slivers haste. I don't really care about Harmonic, so I don't think I would change my mind. But it looks like I was willing to trade my Obsessive Skinner for the Harmonic. Interesting choice. I guess that's a 200 IQ play, probably. Dismember coming down to kill our Fairy Miscreant, I would assume. They're going to be paying some life for that too, though, which I welcome. Magus. It looks like I kept one Magus then in my main board. I must have missed that. Yeah, given that we have a Tarmogoyf in hand, I'm perfectly fine with this. Again, they have to block. They have to block the Tarmogoyf, right? Fairy Miscreant, not really what we need. But actually, at this point, we can play Fairy Miscreant and Tarmogoyf. There's some redundancy in threats, so I like that. We could also just play Magus of the Moon and cut them off from essentially anything. But better safe than sorry. I feel like this is GG. Probably would have been useful for our opponent to cast this earlier on, but I'm assuming they're going to be sacrificing those to our Tarmogoyfs. Credit to our opponent for sticking by this. Pretty sure though this is GG. Okay, so there's a Mutavault, which I forgot about. But again, another Looter il-kor. I don't think this is a problem. I mean, I could turn off the Mutavault right now with the Magus, right? And I think that would probably elicit a... It would elicit a concession. It doesn't, but that's okay. I think I get attack with one Tarmogoyf, yeah. And keep one on the back burner. But again, if I attack both Tarmogoyfs have to be blocked, like no matter what. So they're going to be losing 2 Slivers here. Yeah, I think attacking or everything makes sense. Yep. That's okay. Obviously don't need to land. Counting their lands. I mean, again, they try. All right. Well, he gets one of the few Slivers that requires green, and it does give all the Slivers the ability to tap for mana. But I think again, this is not enough to get through our lines. It's just not. Obsessive Skinner can come down. Give our Looter il-kor some extra reach, and now we show that our opponent that we don't even have to attack with our Tarmogoyfs anymore. And it's a GG. I felt like this was a relatively fair game of Magic. Maybe you guys disagree. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with both games. Pretty consistent. We didn't really misplay. I don't believe our opponent really misplayed. Our opponent drew the cards that they required for the most part. They probably were running a bit dry on game 2. But again, we had responses for their Slivers. We had the removal when we needed it. And we had the bigger threats at the end of the day. Tarmogoyfs get really big with Temur Rogues really quickly. Mishra's Bauble, Thief's Fortune, all these, and Seal of Fire. All of these card types really, you know, accelerate Tarmogoyf's growth. And yeah, we just make it really hard for our opponent to attack profitably. And yeah, we saw the power there. And our rogues, our little rogues, Looter il-kor and Fairy Miscreant, pulled their weight in both games, chipping away at our opponent. Every life counts, as you can see at the end of game 1 and game 2. Every life point counts. So again, overall, all the different creature types complementing each other, all the cards complementing each other. That's why I love Temur Rogues. I don't think it's a tier 1 deck, but it's just a fun deck to play. It could surprise your opponent, and it just kind of leaves them scratching their head at the end, which is exactly what I like. So I hope you enjoyed this match. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy my content in general, subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Helps grow the community, helps support the channel, lets me know that you want to see more. Thanks and have a good one.